A large portion of the Jewish nation has returned to its homeland, but the heart, soul, and mind of much of the Jewish nation are still in exile mode. This state of affairs must and will inevitably change. This is Torah Nation TV from Jerusalem, and we are speaking with the head of Machon Shilo, Rabbi David Bar-Hayim. Shalom, Rabbi Bar-Hayim.
Shalom.
How can we know that God exists?
This question has, of course, been discussed, in fact, for thousands of years, and it is still hotly debated today. And we could sit here and discuss it for hours or days, but in fact, the bottom line is rather straightforward. The first question we have to ask ourselves is, how can we in fact know anything at all? How can we be certain of our impression, or of our opinion, of our understanding of anything? This question is addressed by Rav Saadia Gaon in the beginning of his book, Mivhar Ha'emunot Va'de'ot, a book he wrote on the basic beliefs and concepts of Torah Judaism. But in fact, much of what he writes there would apply to any thinking human being. And he addresses this question of how we know and can be sure of anything at all that we believe to be true. And he writes as follows: Baruch Adonai Elohei Yisrael, blessed be Hashem, the Creator, the God of Israel, Hamna'ameth livnei Adam, Mesi'uth nafsham bewada'uth gemura. He who causes the truth and certainty to be accessible and perceivable to human beings. Uvaemsa'utha, and by way of their consciousness, their awareness, Masa'uth tahushatehem masi'uth wada'ith, they are certain, they can be certain about what they perceive with their senses. Uvahem yada'u et yadi'uthehem yadi'a sodaket, and they can also thus be certain of the things that they can appreciate with their minds. In other words, Rav Saadia Gaon, over 1,000 years ago, states, as some philosophers, both hundreds of years ago and also more recently have stated quite emphatically, that there are only two ways for a person to know anything at all, to be certain of what he sees or what he believes to be true. One is the testimony of his senses, that which his senses tell him. As we say in English, seeing is believing. Seeing is the most definite, the most certain of our senses, more certain than that which we hear or smell, even though these also can be quite definite indicators of a reality, of a truth. Or, on the other hand, one can and should believe in something, that it is true, that it is correct, if one cannot possibly explain a certain reality or a certain fact except by means of a particular specific explanation. In other words, the point Rav Saadia Gaon wishes to make is that the faculty of mind, of perceiving something to be true and real, is something that was created as part of the creation of the human being. This is the nature of human existence. This is the reality of the human mind, that it perceives realities by way of its senses and by way of its reason, the faculty of reason and thought, logic. And therefore, we know something to be true by way of these two possible avenues of knowledge: sensory perception and reason, incontrovertible reason. And these realities, these forms of knowledge, are real and they can be relied upon. In other words, we do not need to discuss the statement of René Descartes, the French philosopher, who stated, "I think, therefore I am." It is in fact quite the other way around. We know what exists, we know that things are true, because Hashem built into us the ability to perceive and to be aware of the truth of those things that we perceive, either by way of sense or by way of reason, and we do not have to question that faculty of mind. That is the essence of human cognition. And therefore, as every reasonable person knows, that nothing comes from nothing. In other words, if we see around us a reality, a universe, we see different phenomena around us and we are certain of their reality. We know that there is a reality. We are also aware of our own reality, our own existence. And therefore we must know by way of incontrovertible reason that this something, this reality, could not come from nowhere, because it is not possible that something comes from nothing. From nothing comes only nothing, and nothing will ever sprout from nothing. And therefore we know, we must know, we perceive with our faculty of mind that was given to us by the Creator, that all that we perceive came from somewhere. And that somewhere can only be a Creator, an all-powerful Creator who brought all of existence into being. This is the only reasonable, rational explanation for reality that exists in all realms and all fields of human knowledge, science, religion, and philosophy. This is the simple, plain truth, that if there is something, it came from somewhere, and that somewhere is the Creator who brought everything into existence.
Doesn't science provide the Big Bang Theory as an alternative to what the Rabbi is saying?
In fact, it's quite the opposite. The Big Bang Theory, based on the observations of the astronomer Edwin Hubble in the 1920s, that the universe is much greater in size than was previously realized, and based on his observations that the universe is expanding, it was understood, therefore, by thinking backwards, so to speak, that if it is expanding from moment to moment, and if we go back in time, it was smaller. Every moment that we go back in time, the universe was a bit smaller, and if we continue to do so, we end up with a point. We reach the conclusion that the universe at some point began from a single point. And this point was called, eventually, was given the term the Big Bang, or the singularity. The concept of a singularity, which is the most common theory amongst cosmologists nowadays, is simply a way of saying that we do not know how reality came into existence. We do understand that it came into existence at a certain point in time, and therefore they postulate something called a singularity. And we must state here, to be plain and honest and forthright, that no one knows what a singularity is, because there is no such reality in the world as we know it. In other words, the singularity, the postulated singularity, is something which is beyond the bounds of known physics. The idea is simply that it must have all begun from something, and this something they refer to as a singularity, and before that time no one can tell you what existed. And the reason for that is because nothing existed. And yes, that is impossible for the human mind to perceive correctly, but that is all we can know. The theory, therefore, of the Big Bang is really just a restatement of the fact that we mentioned before, that something must come from somewhere, and if there is no source, there is no creative power, if there is no active agent that brings something into existence, then nothing will be in existence. It should also be pointed out that not all scientists, not all astrophysicists today subscribe to the Big Bang Theory. There are those who question this idea. There are those who speak about multiverses. Not that this is something that anyone can really understand or explain, and certainly not something that could ever be proved by definition. If we exist in one universe and there are other universes beyond our universe, then by definition we can't know anything about that universe which we cannot observe or know or recognize in any way. There are people who talk about string theory. There are all kinds of ideas about brains, B-R-A-N-E, from the word membranes, that what we call, or what some scientists call, the Big Bang is actually the result of different universes or realities called brains that bump into each other in a cyclical fashion over periods of time and thus create a new universe. All these are wildly speculative ideas which cannot be proved, will never be able to be proved, and in fact many of these ideas are fairly pathetic attempts to flee from the simple fact that, which many scientists by the way do accept, but there are those who do not, and therefore they try to flee from the fact that the universe exists, and if it exists, therefore something brought it into existence, therefore there must be a creator, and therefore there is a God. And this idea certain people rebel against and cannot stomach, and therefore they do anything at all, even things which fly in the face of all reason, and even proposing theories that can never be proved, in order to escape this simple common sense fact, which human reason, logic and perception force upon us and dictate to us that this is what we must understand, and that this is what we must therefore believe to be true. This has always been the basis of the belief in a creator according to Torah Judaism, but it is also equally the only true basis for understanding the reality of the universe as we perceive it, for any human being who wishes to address the facts and deal with the realities and arrive at the only possible rational conclusion.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the Rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the Rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.